everybody, this is Diana from So Very Crafty, and we are here today to make this not a blob, but a fold-up shopping bag. Yes, that's what this is, ladies and gentlemen. This is a fold-up shopping bag. You just unfold it, and it becomes a shopping bag that you can take to the grocery store or to the pharmacy, wherever you like, to reuse over and over again so that you don't have to throw out shopping bags. The ones I find that you get at the supermarket these days don't last. So these fabric shopping bags really do the trick for what you need for shopping these days. You can make these as big or small as you want. It's really up to you what size you want to make them. This is kind of a medium-sized bag today, so I'll give you the measurements for this one, but you can make it bigger if you want or smaller if you want. Just keep the dimensions fairly in coordination with what we have here today, and you should be just fine. So I hope you enjoy this project today. It's a super simple, another beginner sewing project that anyone with basic sewing skills can make. And if you enjoy this project, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, ring that bell for notifications for future So Very Crafty videos that you can get into your inbox. And if you like pictorial tutorials, head over to the website at www.soverycrafty.com, and you'll get tons and tons and tons of more sewing and crafting tutorials there that you won't see here on the YouTube channel. So with this little shopping bag in mind, let's get started on how we put this little project together. So what do we need? We need some fabrics. We need an outer fabric, a lining fabric, and two more smaller pieces of an outer fabric for our pocket. The large outer fabrics are going to measure 16.5 inches by 39 and 3/8 inches. And that's generally going to be on the fold. We want our project to be on the fold where it's going to be, you know, half of 39 and 3/8 inches. And then we're going to have these two pocket pieces that measure 4 3/4 inches by 5.5 inches. And that's where our shopping bag is going to fold into. So that's all we need for this project today, is just these fabrics. Now the first thing we have to do is we have to draw our pattern, if you will, onto our project. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take a ruler and we are going to measure 4 3/4 inch from the side and make a mark. And I'm just using this pencil here. And we're going to do that on both sides. Then we're going to measure 5.5 inches down which is right here. And we're just going to draw a line right through our first mark. And we're going to do the same on the other side, making sure that that's 5.5 inches. And then we're just going to draw a box. And believe it or not, this is going to be our handles. And we're just going to round our corners here a little bit. And you can just eyeball this if you want, or you can measure it out. But I just eyeballed that to make our handles round. Now you'll notice here that I have both of my fabrics doubled up, and I have drawn this box on the fold. And that's where we want it, is on the fold, because we're going to have a giant sort of oblong rectangle in the center of our pieces of fabric, so that we have a place to have our handles. So I'm just going to take both of these pieces of fabric because I want them to match at the end of the day, and it's much easier to have them together, so I'm going to cut them together using my scissors. And I'm just going to go around our curved edge. And around our curved edge again. And so we have this giant cutout, and if we open our fabrics, we will have a giant hole in the middle of our fabrics on both of them. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to create our pocket for the outer part of our outer bag, so that we'll have something to fold our bag into. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to place our two smaller pieces right sides together, and we're just going to stitch along the sides and the bottom using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to run over to the sewing machine and do that. I'm not going to show it on the video. It's just a 1/4 inch seam on the bottom, on the sides and on the bottom, and we're going to leave the top open. Now I have stitched this. I'm going to clip my corners, making sure that I don't clip through the stitching. And then I'm just going to turn this right sides out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head back over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to top stitch along this seam that was the bottom seam of our pocket, or the long side of our pocket piece. I'm just going to top stitch right along here because this is going to be the top of our pocket, and it's going to get some wear, so we want to give it a little bit more structure. Okay, so now I have top stitched my pocket piece, and it's time to add it to my main outer part of my bag. And I have chosen this flowery fabric for my outer bag today. And it is a remnant that I got at Joann's. I love to use remnants for a lot of the projects that I do here at So Very Crafty because they're always 50% off, sometimes even 75% off at your local fabric store. So I'm just going to fold the bottom of this in half so that I can find my center, and I'm just going to give it a finger press here so I know where the center is. And I'm going to do the same thing for the pocket piece. I'm just going to fold it in half and find the center. match the centers. And I'm going to place a couple of pins. I'm going to head back over to the sewing machine and I'm just going to stitch along the sides. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance just to stitch right along the sides to hold this pocket piece in place. There's no need to stitch along the bottom because we'll be doing that in a later step. Now you can see that I have my pocket piece stitched in place. Now it's time for us to put our outer fabric and our lining fabric together. So we are going to place these right sides together. And the important part here is to make sure that the center hole is aligned, because this is where our handles are going to be located. So let's just place these right sides together. Now that we have placed this right sides together, we are going to stitch around this opening using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to show you just how we do that. Here we are at the sewing machine, and I'm just going to start here at the bottom. And I'm going to stitch using my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I have a 1/4 inch foot on my machine, and I'm just going to stitch all the way around. Now we finished our stitching of our two pieces together, and now let's go over to the workstation and move on to our next step. Now here we are back at the workstation, and we are going to turn this bag right sides out. So now we have our handles have a nice seam around the edge. And I'm going to use my quilter's press and cut today to press this so that we can get ready to top stitch all the way around our opening in our fabrics. And fortunately for me, I have a cordless iron, which lets me kind of move it back and forth, which is very convenient. I would really recommend one of these cordless irons, and I'll put a link in the description section on where you can get one of these. It really works great. So let's just get this pressed. Now that's our center pressed. I'm just going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch all the way around this oval that we have in our middle of our bag here, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have top stitched all the way around my center part of my bag. So now I'm going to place this bag long ways across my workstation, and I'm going to start to just roll the far side towards the center, and then I'm going to reach under and pull out the lining and place it right sides together with my outer piece. And I'm going to use some Wonder Clips to clip this all the way down. You can use as many or as few Wonder Clips as you like, or you can use pins. It's completely up to you. If you don't have any Wonder Clips, I'll put a link in the description section on where you can get those. But I think they're a good choice for this rather than pins. But if you're used to using pins, that's fine too. Now I'm just going to stitch using a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way from the top to the bottom of this bag, and then we'll come back and go to our next step. Okay, so now we have finished stitching our bag, and we're going to turn it right sides out. We're just going to pull the inside through the tube. Right sides out, and you can see that we have one stitched edge and one raw edge. Here's our raw edge, and here's our stitched edge. And we're going to take this seam and we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're just going to roll it towards the center. We're going to reach again underneath, take our lining, and fold it right over the top and clip it to the right sides of our outer fabric. And we're just going to clip along the long edge. And again, I'm just going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch one long stitch all the way down this side, and we'll come back and move on to our next step. Now here we are again, and we're going to just do the same thing and pull this out so that it's right sides out. And now you can see we have a bag that's taking shape. Just the way we want it. Now we are going to take our fabrics and we are going to turn them to the lining side. And we are going to fold the long side until it meets the outer edge of our oval that we have in the center. And we're going to do that for both sides. We're going to fold this in half just so we can determine what the center is for our handle pieces. Make sure these raw edges line up on the bottom. And we're going to stitch right across our center of these handles so that they are stitched together. And we can see, I'm just going to place a pin right here on the center here and on the center here. And we can take out these clips. So I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch right across here through all the layers on both sides to stitch these handles in place, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now we have stitched our handles. And now we're going to stitch our sides. Now we are going to stitch from the bottom of this curve. So I'm just going to place a clip here to the bottom of the curve. And if you want, you can use a ruler. We're just going to go from the bottom of this curve, and we're just going to stitch straight down the sides through all the layers. And again, I'm not going to show this on the machine because it's just one straight stitch right down the sides of this. Okay, so now we have stitched along the sides, and we are going to turn our bag right sides out. Now, as you can see, we have a nice bag with two handles, and all we need to do is stitch up the bottom. And the bottom is going to be stitched up using a French seam. Now, for those of you who don't know what a French seam is, what we're going to do is we are going to stitch the bottom right sides out. Now, that would seem counterintuitive because that would leave an open seam on the outside. But we're going to solve that problem by flipping our bag wrong sides out and stitching another seam so that it's nice and neat on the outside. Now, as we have stitched this, we need to make sure that our raw edges are nice and tidy. So I'm going to take my ruler here and I'm just going to tidy up these raw edges a little bit so that when I stitch, I'm going to have a nice clean edge. Now I'm going to stitch along the bottom of this edge, and you will notice that the sides fold in on our bag to give it a little bit of bulk so that when you fill it, it will expand when you fill it. Make sure that those folds stay there when you stitch along the bottom. So we're just going to stitch real quick about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, I would say 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along our nice trimmed edge, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up this bag. We are here at the sewing machine, and we have our bottom of our bag, and we want to make sure that these folds on the side of our bag are still there. And we're just going to use a small seam allowance making sure all of our raw edges are lined up. And then we're going to move over. We are going to turn our bag right sides out, and we're going to stitch another seam just like this one. Okay, we have flipped our bag wrong sides out, and now we want to make sure that these folds are back folded on the sides, on both sides. You can see that there's a fold there on the side of our bag. And now we're going to stitch another seam that's either a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 inch. It's up to you, because we've only sewn a 1/8 inch seam below, and we're just going to stitch right across. Now by stitching right across this seam, it encloses the raw edges on the right side of our fabric and gives us a nice finished edge on the inside of our fabric. So let's flip our bag right sides out and go over to our workstation. Here we are back at our workstation, and we have our bag right sides out. We have a nice French seam on the bottom. We still have our folds in the side of our bag, and our bag is complete. That's all there is to it. We have our handles. They are complete. All we have to do now is fold up our bag. Just fold it into the center. Fold the handles down and flip our pocket around. And our bag fits snugly inside our pocket to take on our next trip to the shopping center or to the supermarket or to the pharmacy, and we are ready to go. That's all there is to this project today. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a super simple one, You can do it in just a few minutes. It doesn't take long. It's a little fidgety in areas when you're trying to line up all of the raw edges, but otherwise it's a beginner sewing project. I hope you give this one a try. If you like this project, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, ding that bell for notifications, and head over to the website if you want more sewing and crafting tutorials at www.sewverycrafty.com. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of more sewing and crafting tutorials that you won't find here on the YouTube channel. So again, I hope you enjoyed this project today, and I will see you all next time. Bye.